Before words, before writing, humans looked at each other toil and understood.
The storm. It comes.
And others have answered. A voice with power commoned, to gather, to guide. The tongue, the lips, the breath, nature's instruments began to shape expression. Inside the brain, new pathways began to glow, awakening the power of sound.
Together, they hunted. A shared rhythm through simple sounds.
In the long nights by the fire, our ancestors began to tell.
Stories became symbols, painted on stone, passed through generations.
From scattered minds to shared purpose, through the birth of voice.
Then came the idea of time. Before. It grew like a tree, splitting into thousands of tongues. Language traveled with us. Across mountains, oceans, into every corner of Earth.
With marks in mud and bark, they began to leave messages.
One by one, they took turns, testing the music of the mouth.
Separated by land, their sounds began to change.
From one voice, many voices were born, each shaped by time and space.
Their hands, their grunts, became stories. For the first time, silence felt full. They warned, protected, remembered, all with voice.
Sound crossed space brooding and returned with meaning. Language made them more than animal, but what made language?
Language lifted them beyond instinct, but what stirred that first sound?
We often think human evolution was driven by walking upright, speaking, or making tools. But one silent revolution changed everything. Cooking. Before fire, our ancestors ate raw meat, raw roots, raw leaves. It was tough to chew, tougher to digest. They spent hours, even days, processing food with their jaws and guts, long intestines, massive colons, because the body had to fight through tough fiber, pathogens, and raw flesh. But then, we started cooking. We placed meat over embers. We roasted tubers. We discovered heat didn't just warm, it transformed food. Suddenly, nutrients became accessible. Flavor, richer, digestion, faster. And that changed our biology. According to Harvard anthropologist Richard Wrangham, cooking allowed our guts to shrink. Why? Because cooked food is easier to break down, and less digestion meant we saved energy. Where did that energy go? To the brain. With all that saved energy, our brains began to grow. From a species that once chewed for hours, we became thinkers. Cooking didn't just make food safer. It gave us time. Time to rest, time to wonder, time to imagine. For the first time, we could sit by the fire and think. It's no exaggeration to say the first stew pot led to the first civilization. Cooking shrank our guts, but it expanded our minds. Fire didn't just cook our food, it reshaped our bodies. It freed our minds. We stopped being just foragers. We became thinkers. And when humans had time to dream, to plan, to speak by firelight, we were ready for the next leap. Organized hunting. Once the stomach was full and the mind awakened, the legs began to wander further. We were no longer content picking berries or scavenging carcasses. We wanted more. We wanted control. We wanted to hunt. And it all started with fire, with a freed mind, with tools made by clever hands and strategies born from thought. At first, our weapons were crude, sharpened sticks, stones tied to wooden shafts. But combined with something no other species had, those primitive weapons became lethal. We weren't stronger than lions. We weren't faster than gazelles. We had no claws, no fangs. But we had something else. Intelligence, memory, cooperation. Early hunters didn't go alone. They studied footprints. They tracked movement patterns. They worked in teams, coordinated, silent, patient. And when the moment came, they struck like one. This was the turning point. The hunted Kaisai had become the hunters. We didn't just hunt to eat. We hunted to understand the world. Each chase was a lesson. Which way the wind carried scent. How deer moved when startled. Which rocks were slippery. Which trails stayed dry. We learned to drive animals toward traps, to dig pits, to hide for days, waiting. And when a kill came, it wasn't just a meal. It was a celebration. Meat was shared. Bones became tools. Hides turned to clothing. Tendons tied weapons. Nothing was wasted. The fire roared. The tribe gathered, eating, laughing, remembering. Children watched the elders, eyes wide, not just admiring, aspiring. I'll do that one day, they thought. We were no longer just surviving. We were ascending. We climbed the first rung of the food chain. And hunting gave us more than food. It gave us insight into the animals, the earth, and ourselves. After the meal, when the fire still flickered low and the forest settled into silence, something shifted. We no longer looked at one another just as survivors, but as something more. A question hung in the night, unspoken. Who are we? Hunting helped us live, but fire helped us dream. It gave us quiet. And in that quiet, we began to look inward. And that is when culture was born. At first, it was just a smear of charcoal on stone, a deer, a bison, a handprint. Maybe it was a record of the hunt, but maybe it was something deeper, a whisper to the future. I was here. We existed. Around the fire, we started telling stories, passing memory from one voice to another, preserving what time tried to erase. The cave was no longer just a shelter. It became the first cathedral, a place where humans lit more than fire. They lit the idea of the sacred, the idea of something beyond survival. They beat stones, tapped on hollow trees. They danced, they mimicked animals, They created rhythm and ritual. Culture didn't rise from abundance. It rose from a need for meaning. We didn't just want to live. We wanted to understand why we lived. We wanted to belong. Once imagination was ignited, there was no stopping it. We envisioned spirits. We dreamed of afterlives. We imagined gods, ancestors, protectors. And from that, belief was born. Religion, festivals, music, article mythology, all of it, began with a quiet night, around the fire. From a burning stick, we came so far. From raw meat and dark caves, to storytelling, painting, dreaming, and praying. Culture wasn't an afterthought. It was the first sign that we knew we were different.